I'm Doreen Skolnick. I am the clinical social worker with the Brain Injury Department at Gaylord Hospital. Today we're going to be talking about the reasons for avoiding drugs and alcohol after brain injury. So one of the things that we're going to go over in the next few minutes is some of the key reasons why people should not use and abuse anything after brain injury. Reason number one. People who use alcohol or other drugs after their injury do not recover as well as those who do not. It sounds like common sense, but it's something that we all need to keep in mind because it affects anybody who's had a brain injury. You're not going to recover as well as those who do not if you're going to continue to use and abuse. Reason number two. Problems with balance, walking, and talking are made worse by alcohol and drugs. Alcohol and drugs generally can cause falls, difficulty speaking, with those even without brain injury. So if you have had a brain injury and use and abuse, it's going to affect your overall balance, your walking and talking, all the things that you're working so hard in rehab to overcome. Number three, people who have had a brain injury sometimes say and do things without thinking them through. This problem is made worse by drugs and alcohol. Often after a brain injury, you tend to be quite disinhibited. There are behavioral issues. You do not have total self-control. You are very impulsive. Anybody who uses and abuses also tends to be very impulsive. No self-control. And if you put those two things together, that's when you get in trouble. And what we want to do and why we say it's so important to avoid drugs and alcohol is we want to avoid you getting in trouble by using and abusing. Brain injuries can make it more difficult to pay attention, remember new information, and think things through clearly. Drugs and alcohol will interfere with all of these abilities that you've been working so hard in therapy. Many people find that their brain injury, they have to release some of these skills what they once had, and they have to relearn them. It is very common to have problems finding the right word, concentrating, solving problems, and making use of their thinking skills. Once you add alcohol and drugs to these problems, make it even harder to get things done. After a person has had a brain injury, they generally find that alcohol and other drugs have a more powerful effect. After a brain injury, the brain is much more sensitive to alcohol and drugs. No matter what a person's ability to handle alcohol and drugs was before the injury, it is now reduced after the injury. Also, alcohol and drugs can very much interfere with the prescribed medication. Let me spend an extra minute on this because each one of these are very important, but this one is particularly important. If you have in your head that at one point you used to be able to have a case of beer, 4 shots of vodka, and so you don't think it's a big deal when you go out with friends to have one, your body is not the same. Your brain is not the same. Your body cannot tolerate what it once did in the past. And if you even try to have one, it's going to have a very powerful effect. You cannot do what you once did. After a brain injury, it is common to have times when a person feels down or depressed. Drinking and using drugs can make the depression worse. Particularly alcohol. Alcohol is a downer. People do not appreciate that alcohol is a downer. It brings you down. So if you're thinking about use and abuse, particularly with alcohol, that tends to bring people down. And now you've had a brain injury, that tends to put people down. And that you can become very depressed. And depression is very serious. We take it very seriously. And the effects of a brain injury can cause a depressed mood, but it will become worse with any drinking and drugs. And that will interfere with your ability for recovery and getting better. Number 7. Drinking and using drugs can increase the likelihood of having a seizure. About 5% of people with a brain injury go on to have trouble with seizures. The key thing to remember is you cannot mix drugs and alcohol with your medications. If you do, you put yourself at risk of having a seizure. And a seizure is truly another form of a brain injury, and you've already had a very serious brain injury. You don't want to put yourself in that category. Also, what a lot of you probably do not understand is, if it's documented that you've had a seizure, your physician needs to contact the Motor Vehicle Bureau, and it goes on your record for the next 6 months you are not allowed to drive. So if you have a goal of going back to driving, that's not going to happen for some time. So you do not want to put yourself at risk to having a seizure. And one way that happens if you mix drugs and alcohol with the medications you're on. So bottom line is you need to avoid. Using drugs or alcohol after a brain injury increases your risk of having another brain injury. So what you have to remember, and sometimes a lot of patients think, well, I've had one, I'm done. It doesn't work that way. If you continue to not do a healthy lifestyle, you're at risk. And remember, you're already at risk because you've had a brain injury. And I can tell you from years of experience, anybody who does not listen and continues to use, if they come back here with another brain injury, they do not recover as well. And you will have a much harder time for the next phase of your recovery. So bottom line is no use, no abuse, or anything else. All right? So all of this is just because you've had one doesn't mean you're free and clear. You're not. You're actually greater risk, and shows that you have to be even more vigilant about any use and any abuse. All right? And before I finish, I just want to say, when we're talking about drugs and alcohol, I'm incorporating all forms of drug and all forms of alcohol. All right? None of it is good for you after brain injury. At this point, any form of any drugs or alcohol puts you at risk. And all the different ways it will impact your recovery. It'll put you at risk for having a seizure. It'll put you at risk for having another brain injury. So the bottom line is zero tolerance. Thank you so much for watching this video about brain injury and substance abuse. I hope you have an opportunity to watch our other videos in our brain injury education series. Thank you.